Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Open Mic here on my YouTube channel. I am your host, John Campea, and Open Mic is simply the show we do in the afternoons because, in the mornings on the John Campea Show, we have a little bit of time for some live questions, but all we do on Open Mic is just a big virtual water cooler, all of us standing around talking about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all that sort of stuff. We got about an hour here today to do some stuff. I have a big night lined up in front of me. Today is actually Anne's birthday. That's my wife, Anne. We went to San Diego this weekend to celebrate her birthday weekend, but we're actually going out tonight to a nice dinner. And then after that, the two of us are going to go watch a screening of the new John Cena comedy Blockers. So I'm going to see that tonight. Hopefully my review will be up either later tonight or early tomorrow. So keep your eye open for that. So that's my day in front of me. But listen, guys, we're here to talk about your topics and what you want to talk about. So let's go over to the live chat right now and start taking your questions. And the first question today comes to us from Ben Rayner. And Ben Rayner writes, what if The Last Jedi is going to have the reverse effect of what we thought? What if because everyone is mixed makes everyone want to see Solo because it's so familiar? Is this possible? Oh, it's totally possible. It's funny because a friend of mine and I were having that discussion the other day that, because, I think the majority of people like The Last Jedi, but there's a good chunk of people who didn't like The Last Jedi. Totally fair. But, the discussion was then, well, do we think the people who didn't like Last Jedi may not come out to see it? And it's been brought up a few times in some conversations that, the fact that some people went to go see The Last Jedi and weren't happy with it may actually increase the odds of them coming back to see Solo because they feel like they need to get a redemption thing for them. Like for me, I like The Last Jedi, but for those who didn't, they might be looking at Solo as a redemption. And hell, if they do like Solo, they may come back and watch it 5 or 6 times. So while there are people like myself who've been questioning, how successful can a Solo be? We talked the other day about right now the initial projection numbers have come out, and they're projecting a $150 million opening weekend for Solo. I still have a hard time believing that. That seems really high. But if it does come in at that, then color me surprised, because I'm one of those people who I think we all need to temper our expectations about how well Solo will do. I don't care that it's a Star Wars movie. I have not been all that, encouraged about how well I think it'll do, but I might be completely dead wrong, and those tracking numbers that came out might suggest that. So we'll have to just wait and see how that pans out, Ben. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question comes to us from Adam Griffin, who writes, A Quiet Place is tracking for a $25 to $30 million opening. Can positive word of mouth help Ready Player One to a 40% drop or lower to maintain number one? FYI, Blockers is tracking for 15 to 20 million. I don't know. That's a tall order. That is a tall order for Ready Player One. Like if it drops 40% and it opens at 41 million, you're talking about a movie coming in at 25. I mean, it's possible. It is possible that Ready Player One holds on to that top spot. But here's the thing. If Ready Player One holds on to the number one spot, it won't be because it's doing so great. I mean, if it comes in on its second weekend at, say, 25 million, that's not a great number. And it's a number that a new movie could be able to beat. But, the movies that are opening against it, A Quiet Place, Blockers, these are not blockbuster films. So there is a chance. But if it does hold on to the number one spot, that's not saying a lot. So I still don't think it'll be number one. But if it is, again, it's not saying much. But, if it is and it takes only like a 20% drop, that'll be more impressive. But right now, if it does hold on to the number one spot, it won't be because it's doing so great. It'll be because there's no stiff competition opening up against it. So that's what we're saying. But, I mean, hey, if A Quiet Place can open to 25 to 30 million, that would be great for A Quiet Place. And for something like Blockers, 15 to 20 million, I swear to you, when I first heard about that movie and I heard who was going to be in it, this is long before I saw any trailers, I thought that movie would be lucky to get a $10 million opening weekend. The trailers will look pretty good. I'm going to go see it tonight. We'll see how it actually performs. All right, let's move on here. The next one comes to us from the Master of Odin, writes, Hey, John, Lord and Miller were announced as executive producers on Solo. What is the role of an executive producer in a movie? It depends on the movie. Like, seriously, a lot of times the term producer or executive producer or whatever is just a term, is almost an honorary term sometimes. However, Lord and Miller, even though I don't think there's an awful lot left of the movie that they directed for Solo. They are the ones who helped pull everything together. They helped get all the talent together, all that kind of stuff. They help with the casting decision, blah, blah, blah. So it is fair, even though, Ron Howard's come in and redone most of the film, it's fair to give them executive producer credit because they pulled a lot of that movie together. They're the ones who pulled a lot of it together. There is no one definition about what an executive producer does because, again, Steven Spielberg is a producer and an executive producer on 1,000 films, and many of them he never did squat on. So you can't really, nail down one definition per se. But in this case, even if they're no longer the directors of credit, you cannot deny the material contribution they made to Solo getting made. Therefore, them getting an executive producer credit or any kind of a producer credit for that sake is probably warranted and justified. All right, let's move on down to the next one. And the next one comes to us from the number Thor, who writes, do you think we will ever get a lightweight collision of McGregor versus Khabib, and who would win? I doubt it. I'm really starting to doubt McGregor ever comes back to MMA. Conor McGregor always had this saying. He said this starting years ago. Get in, get rich, get out. He got in, he got rich, and I think he's looking to get out. Unless the UFC comes to him with a number that they shouldn't pay him. Like, unless the UFC comes to him and offers him a $10 million payday for a fight, which they've never given to anybody, then I just don't see it happening. He's got a kid now. He's a father now. So with McGregor being a dad, with McGregor cashing that huge payday he had with the Floyd Mayweather fiasco circus, why would he come back? He became a 2-division champion. He became the biggest name in the sport. What's there left to come back to? Now, you asking the question, a collision between McGregor and Khabib, well, that's assuming Khabib goes on and wins this weekend, which I think he will. He's a bad man. But theoretically speaking, McGregor and Khabib fight. I'm going to go Khabib. I think Khabib beats Conor McGregor. I'm a big Conor McGregor fan, but Khabib is a legit physical manifestation of your deepest, darkest nightmare. This guy is a bad man. And who knows? Maybe he loses this weekend and doesn't win the lightweight title. We'll have to wait and see. But right now, I would put my money on Khabib over McGregor. Let's see. Samuel Graves writes, hey, John, on the companion video today, you said A Quiet Place is rated R. However, it's actually rated PG-13. Just thought I'd point that out. Actually, I realized that a little bit earlier today, that it's actually a PG-13 film, which means it's probably not all that gory. I heard it's scary as hell, which I think why, it just in the back of my head, I was thinking like it would be a rated R thing, but it's not. It's PG-13, probably a very edgy PG-13, which just goes again to the point that you can get away with an awful lot in PG-13 these days. That's why I never worry if a film, they say it's going to be rated R, PG-13. Doesn't really matter to me. But yes, you are right. I said on the companion video it's rated R, but it is actually indeed a PG-13 film. Thanks for that, Samuel. All right, the number Thor writes in, what are your thoughts on the show Falling Skies? Wasn't that big of a fan of it. I think somebody asked me about that show a couple of weeks ago. And I only watched like the first season. And I just did not get into it. Just didn't get into it. I know a few people who really like the show, but it just did not work for me. It didn't hit for me. All right, Dakota Barber writes, happy birthday to Anne. I'm sure she'll appreciate that. What do you think of Schindler's List? Thinking of my favorite Spielberg films after Ready Player One, and Schindler's List is number 2, powerful movie. Well, that goes without saying. That's like asking, what do you think of The Godfather? Schindler's List is just like universally acknowledged as a brilliant film. It's beyond brilliant. It's amazing. I don't even know, this is a credit to how good Steven Spielberg is. I'm not even sure Schindler's List is in my top 3 or 4. I'm not even sure Schindler's List is in my top 3 or 4. My number 1 is Amistad. Everybody knows that. But then you've got Raiders of the Lost Ark. You've got Jaws. You got Close Encounters. You got E.T. You've got Lincoln. You've got, the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. He is simply saying, he's the greatest, Saving Private Ryan, whatever. He is the greatest filmmaker of all time. No one else comes close. So that's how good he is. Schindler's List is universally acknowledged as an all-time brilliant film. And I don't even know it's in my top 3 or 4 for Spielberg. That's just something else. But it's a brilliant film for sure. Athena writes, just saw A Quiet Place. You are in for a treat if you haven't seen it already. Great acting, cinematography, and Oscar-worthy sound design and editing. Everybody's saying great things about it. I finally, just like an hour ago, was able to accept an invitation to go see a screening on Wednesday night. So I'm going to see it a little bit earlier. So I'm going to go see it on Wednesday night. So hopefully late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, I'll have my review up for it. But I'm hearing nothing but spectacular things from everybody who has seen this movie. Like, I've honestly yet to hear one negative thing about this film. So John Krasinski, well done, buddy. I'm looking forward to seeing this. Like, huge looking forward to seeing this. Let's see. Ariel Sandoval writes, need but John t-shirts. What is Cinemark XD? Cinemark is like the 3rd or 4th biggest movie theater chain in the US. And it's their version of, that's their premium version. But I've never been to one. Somebody was asking about that the other day. Let me just get this here. I have never actually been to one. People have been asking me about it. You know, what do you think about it? And it's like, I honestly don't. I know nothing about it. I don't know if it's AMC's Prime Theater with Dolby. It's denoted by Dolby Atmos sound, the dual laser Dolby projection system, the recliner seats, blah, blah, blah. I don't even really know what the Cinemark XD experience, what makes that their premium theater. Is it a special type of projection, all that kind of stuff? I have just honestly never lived anywhere near a Cinemark. So I've never even been inside of a Cinemark theater. So I have no idea what makes an XD theater an XD theater. If you guys want to jump into the comment section and let everybody know, that would be great if you guys know. The number Thor writes, I heard you talk about Clive Owen on a previous show. I think he's a great actor. In fact, I wanted him as a Bond before they cast him. He would have been a very good Bond, absolutely. Do you think Clive would have been a good Bond? Yeah. And I remember when we were talking about Clive Owen the other day, because I think it came up in a topic about the Children of Men movie. That movie's so great. Michael Caine's in there as well. That movie's fantastic. And it kind of got us going on this side topic about whatever happened to Clive Owen. I mean, I just saw he was in that Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets in some bit role as a general, whatever. But he is a great actor. He's got the great Hollywood good looks. He's a great actor. He's got a really good filmography. Why he is not an A-list guy right now is completely beyond me. Totally beyond me. All I can think is he slept with the wrong guy's wife. I mean, seriously, he's everything on paper says this dude should be a major A-list star. Why is he not? He's so good. So, I don't know. Getting to your specific question. Oh yeah, he would have made a great Bond. He would have made a great Bond. You know what? That's a great example. I think him as Bond is a great example that never ever think only one actor could have played a role, because Daniel Craig is my all-time favorite Bond. You guys have heard me say that before. I believe he's a perfect hybrid of the badass Sean Connery Bond and the suave debonair Roger Moore Bond. He's the perfect hybrid of the two. And yet, had he not gotten the role, I bet your ass that Clive Owen would have been a great Bond too. I mean, so there's a great example of never ever think that the one person you've seen in the role is the only person that could have played that role. I think Clive Owen could have been a great James Bond. I really do. But we'll never know. We'll never find out. He could have been a lot of things, but he never gets the roles. I have no idea why. Corey Gaines writes, so, if Captain Marvel is set in the 1990s, Fury and Coulson already knew about her for Avengers Initiative. Why was there no mention of her? And she's one of the most powerful ones to have on the team. Well, we don't know. I mean, look, it is quite possible that Captain Marvel ends with everybody thinking she's dead. Or it could end with her going off with the Kree. Or it could just end with her disappearing. Or, I mean, there's 1,000 different explanations, none of which we can actually answer until we've seen the movies. You can ask, why didn't anybody mention her? Well, we don't know. We haven't seen the movie yet. But I can already think of about 5, 6, or 7 possibilities as to why. They think she's dead. She just disappears. She goes off with the Kree. Maybe she goes off to another planet, something like that. Maybe she says, Earth isn't for me. I'm out of here. But I don't know. There's been some speculation that Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye character in Infinity War, there's been a bunch of speculation that his whole role in the film could be, because he has said that Hawkeye's going to be on his own mission, a side mission, going on in Infinity War. Some people have speculated, and I've kind of bought into the theory myself, that he is specifically out looking for Captain Marvel. That he's trying to track down Carol Danvers. Again, nobody's confirmed that. That is not from any official word. That's just a fan theory. It's just a fan theory that I happen to think fits our certain set of criteria and facts that we have right now. That could be a possibility. And all that would, again, play into why didn't they get in touch with her? Why wasn't she on the original Avengers team? Clearly, the Captain Marvel movie will address that, but we simply won't know until it does. I think the 3 most likely answers are they think she's dead, she just disappears, or she goes off with the Kree. As some sort of peace agreement or something like. Who knows? Lots of different possibilities. What are some of your theories? What do you think they're going to come up with in the Captain Marvel movie to explain why she hasn't been mentioned up until this point? I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. All right. Miles Pardo writes, Ready Player One was massive internationally, 181 million opening. No, that's not massive. That's good. That's good. It's not massive. And you're going to see that now drop massively. A lot of people hear these numbers and it's like, no, 181 million, that's a good opening. It ain't massive. That's not a massive opening. And besides, considering you can never compare, it's never worth looking at what was the international opening weekend because every movie opens in a different number of countries every weekend, so you can't compare them. It's not a bad opening weekend number, but it's certainly not great. As a matter of fact, if we go over here and we check out Ready Player One right now, like it got like 181, not internationally, got 181 worldwide. So that includes North America. Internationally made about 121 million. So it made about 121 million or 127 million, internationally. With its long weekend counted in, it's now made 53 million. Right now, it sits at 180 million worldwide. But that's not opening weekend. That includes the long weekend numbers too. So it's really not, unfortunately, the movie deserves much better, but unfortunately, that's not that impressive. It just isn't. James B. writes, I loved Ready Player One, the book and the movie. I'll be 52 this year, so it was like a blast from the past for me, but I understand why Spielberg had to focus more on the story than cultural references. Oh, and that's what a movie should do, right, Jan? A movie needs to focus more on the movie. What I loved so much, I think the thing I was impressed with the most about Ready Player One was, and if you saw my review, you've heard me say this, but is the way Spielberg used cultural references, but they were never just throwaway cultural references. Like, whether it's Iron Giant or the DeLorean or that movie they reference halfway through, those references become important parts of the story. You know, we've seen lots of movies like Emoji Movie that just throw up pop culture references saying, look, it's that cat video. Look, it's Facebook. Look, it's Instagram. You know, and they're just there and they're gone. Spielberg, when he uses a reference, he actually makes it a part of the story. You know, and that's the thing that I appreciated the most. There's 1,000 things about that movie that I really appreciated for sure. But it was his ability to take those references and give them narrative purpose. Give them a plot. Give them a point in the movie, I should say. And that's the thing that I really, really dug. I can't speak to the book because I never read the book. But the movie to me was just brilliant. Anyway, thanks for sharing that, James. All right, next up. The Number Thor writes, if we don't see John Cena pop up in Fast 9, do you think there is a chance that he may be in the Hobbs and Shaw spinoff with The Rock and Statham? Well, that question is coming for those of you who didn't see the show the other day. John Cena was doing an interview and he said, look, I don't keep a list of people I want to work with, But my dream scenario, Cena said, is to be in a Fast and Furious movie with The Rock. That me and Dwayne Johnson have had great chemistry together, and they did. Like, their WrestleMania thing was one of the most popular things they've ever done. And he said, I would love to do that. Blockers is coming out now. The reviews have been very good. He's getting some pop from that. Is it possible? And I said, hey, look, the one thing that Cena's got going for him here. Well, here are the two big things Cena's got going for him. Number one, it's not like Fast and the Furious franchise is filled with Shakespearean actors, okay? You've got Ludacris, who I love Ludacris in it, but world-class thespian he is not. You've got Tyrese in there, who's a little bit off his rocker, and if I was in charge of the studio, I would fire his ass for harming the property. But I love Tyrese and his character in these movies. Not a Shakespearean level actor. You got Vin Diesel, who actually is a pretty damn good actor. Not, world class, but I love Vin Diesel. I'm a big Vin Diesel fan. You got Dwayne Johnson, who I think is great, but you got a lot of these characters in here who are just fun characters, but it's not like the movie is filled with people who have mantles filled with Academy Awards, right? So John Cena's got that going for him. So he could probably jump in there and fit right in. The other thing that John Cena has going for him is that if you wanted to have somebody that could come close in this franchise to match The Rock's physical presence and physical domination and physical intimidation, John Cena is your guy. Like, John Cena is like one of the most genetically perfect human beings on the face of the earth. I mean, he's that guy. He could be that guy. Again, I think the chances of this actually happening are next to nil. Every actor wants to be in Fast and the Furious. It's a popular film franchise, and they'd get famous and have a big payday. Every actor wants to be in that. Would he fit? Would he detract? I don't know. It's not for me to say. I'll just say I don't think it's the wildest theory in the world. It could happen, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I really don't think it's going to happen. All right, next up. James B. writes, if they tried to shoehorn in every possible pop culture reference from the book and Ready Player One, it would have been a complete mess. Well, again, I'm somebody who didn't see Ready Player One, right? So I didn't see the movie. So I can't speak to that. But considering that the book is 400 pages long, or just shy of 400 pages, and the traditional screenplay needs to come in around 120 pages, I'm sure there's a whole hell of a lot that they didn't put in the movie. And that's good. Steven Spielberg's first, as the greatest filmmaker of all time, his first priority would have been making a good story. Use the elements from the book that help the story in the movie. Get rid of the things in the book that don't service the main narrative. Everything else is excess, cut it away. And Steven Spielberg, I'm sure a lesser director would have stepped in there, because I think this movie's under 2 hours. I could be wrong about that. Let me double check this. Indulge me for a second, guys, as I look this up. But Ready Player One runtime. I think it's short. Well, no, actually, I'm wrong. It's saying 2 hours and 19 minutes. Man, for me, that movie flew by. It flew by. I was going to say that movie's got to be under 2 hours. It's a good thing I checked. Apparently, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes. Does not feel like 2 hours and 20 minutes. That movie flies by, man. That's a great compliment to a movie. But I'm sure a lesser director probably would have made this movie 2 hours and 40 minutes to make sure we cram in all this other stuff from the book. Steven Spielberg said, nope, let's take what's essential. That's going to make it a great movie. Everything else can be cut away. And that's what a good filmmaker should do, and that's what he did. Let's see. Brian Rogers writes, hey, John, sent my first QT into you question, I guess, a while back, and honestly didn't think much for it getting answered. When you did, you caught me off guard, and I totally reacted like a child. Love the show, watch every day. Well, I'm glad I could do that for you, Brian. Yeah, look, for those of you who don't know, I do the John Campea show every day, and the main topics are always just from emails that you guys send in. You guys determine the topics that we talk about. And the way you send in a question or a topic is just john@thejohncampeashow.com. Once again, the email address is john@thejohncampeashow.com. And you got to remember to put the word topic in the subject line. A lot of people don't put the word topic, and so I never see their emails. You got to put the word topic in the subject line, so that way I know you're sending in a question for that show, and I pick them out. And it's always kind of cool that I get, tweets or messages from people like you, Brian, saying, I can't believe my question was on the show. So I'm glad you sent it in. I wish you had mentioned in your message here which question was yours. That would be interesting to know. But hey, man, you're welcome. Thank you for sending in the question, because you guys program the show. If you guys didn't send in your questions, we wouldn't have a show. So thank you, Brian. All right, let's move on here. Next one comes to us from Zizu, who writes, how come a site like Box Office Mojo is missing production budget for a lot of movies, even newer ones like Ready Player One and Black Panther? Is it that difficult to get that info? Probably. It's up to the studio if they want to let anybody know what it is. Nobody has a right to that information. It's not public knowledge. It's only known if the studios, report what the budget is. So sometimes they'll know it, sometimes they won't. If a studio says, if anybody asks, hey, can you tell us the production budget of your movie? And they say, no, we'd rather not. What are you going to do? It's none of our business. So I'll be honest with you. I have no idea why some studios even let people know what their production budget is. I mean, I'm glad that they do. It helps us as fans understand the filmmaking process better and understand the business better. So I'm very glad that they do. But I can't come up with a good reason why any of them give us their production information. It's not like we as an audience have a right to know. We don't. So I'm just glad that a lot of them do. But yeah, Box Office Mojo is no different from anybody else. They just report what the studios, the public information that the studios make available. So I'm going to guess it is that difficult to get it. All right. Next question comes to us from, hold on a second. I got to go back and find it now. Next one comes to us from Brian Rogers, who writes, also, my question was me telling, I was just saying, I wish you had told me what it was. My question was me telling you about the film Help, I'm a Fish, with Alan Rickman's voice in it. It features a then unknown Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad. That's very cool. I have no one else's opinion about the film. I remember that now. And I was like, I've never seen the film. I'm not even actually really all that aware of the film. So I can't answer. I remember not being able to answer the question, but that was you who sent that in. I'm glad you did. Let's see. The number Thor writes, hey, John, you've mentioned before that we can't have a Robin in the DCEU because Batman taking a kid out to battle wouldn't be right. But Chris O'Donnell played Robin as an adult. So why can't we get an adult Robin in the DCU? Hey, look, and I've never said they can't do it. I said they shouldn't do it because that would be stupid. Like having a grown-ass man Batman. I'm going to take this 12-year-old kid with a stick into a fight with a bunch of armed mobsters. Yeah, I'm not an asshole. Anyway. It would be ridiculous. It would ruin any movie. And then inevitably I get people saying, but John, you like Kick-Ass and Hit Girl was like a little 12-year-old girl. Yeah, but Kick-Ass was a comedy spoof satire movie. If you want to make Batman a spoof satire, fine. Put a 12-year-old Robin. I'm fine with that. But don't pretend like Batman is the same thing as Kick-Ass. One is a satirical spoof comedy. One is not. And if you want to suddenly say Batman is satire spoof, then fine. But that's why Hit Girl works in Kick-Ass, because it's satire. It's satire and it's a spoof. So sure, that works there. Doesn't work here. Anyway. But I've never said they can't do it. They can if they want. But I have also always said, if you change the story of Robin, then I'm totally cool with it. Like if you change, that's why I was cool with the way they did with Chris O'Donnell. Not that the movie was great with Chris O'Donnell, but I mean, I was totally cool with the way they did that. If you want to change the story to saying, hey, Bruce Wayne adopted this Richard Grayson kid when he was a child, let him in on the secret that he was Batman, and spent the next 10 years training to this kid in the safety and in the privacy of the Batcave. And then when that kid turned 22, 23, Batman unleashed this character, Robin, onto the world. I'm good with it. I'm totally good with it. I have no qualms with that. I just think that might piss off a lot of the fans of the traditional comics, saying you're changing the story of Robin from the comics. I would argue that the only way you can make this work in a movie is to change it. So yeah, I'm totally with you, Number Thor, that if they change his story to the point that we've got a 19-year-old, a 23-year-old, whatever, Robin out in the field, I'm cool with that. It'll be weird getting over the changes, but I'm totally fine with that. I am. Just the notion of some 10-year Batman bringing a 10-year-old kid with a stick into a firefight with supervillains and mobsters makes Batman an asshole and somebody who should be put in jail. That's just kind of my thought on that. Anyway, works great in the cartoons and it works great in the comic pages, but that's why there's a difference between the cartoons, the comic pages, and a live action movie that you want people to take relatively seriously. So I just think there's a difference there. Okay. Conor Diaz writes, hope your Easter weekend was great. It was great. We celebrated Anne's birthday in San Diego. Thank you. I spent mine watching Singing in the Rain. Oh, what a great movie to watch. And The Italian Job, also great. For the first time was so awesome. Yeah. Ed Norton Jr. I'm assuming you're talking about the Ed Norton Jr. one. Jason Statham. It was Mark Wahlberg. It's a real fun little movie. I really liked it. And to me, I remember when it first came out, I was like, this looks like a throwaway, but I quite enjoyed that movie. So I'm glad and of course, watching Singing in the Rain. That's just one of the all-time classics. I dare you to tell me the next time you walked on even any type of a clicky surface, you don't start tap dancing a little bit. Come on. You do, right? You do. Just be honest. You can tell me. You do. All right. ZOMG Ruler writes, what does AM need to make opening weekend to show fans they're back on board? Oh, Aquaman. Okay. What does Aquaman need to make opening weekend to show fans are back on board with the DCEU? Also, trolls are mocking Snyder's disability online. Disgraceful. Well, first of all, I don't even know of Zack Snyder's disabilities, and I haven't seen anything about. But guess what? There are trolls trolling everybody everywhere over anything that can be trolled. So don't worry about that. Aquaman can't, and that's okay. You see, because the trick isn't Aquaman. Because Aquaman's going to make opening weekend what it's going to make opening weekend. It will not show that people are or aren't back on board because they haven't seen the movie yet to know if they're back on board or not. Don't worry about the opening weekend for Aquaman. Don't worry about it. If Aquaman makes 40 million opening weekend, don't worry about it. That just is a continuance of what happened with Justice League. That we've already had this referendum by the audience. The audience is giving up on the DCEU. Don't worry about what the opening weekend of Aquaman does. Worry about how Aquaman does with the audience once it's done its run. That's where we judge. Look, Aquaman is not going to do great financially, but that's okay. If you're Aquaman, they should just take that pressure off themselves. The question is not opening weekend or anything like that, because that doesn't tell us anything. What's really going to tell us something is when Shazam comes out. I believe Shazam is supposed to come out before Wonder Woman, I think. Anyway, I have to double check that. But let's, for argument's sake, say Shazam is coming out before Wonder Woman. Let's say Shazam is the next DC film to come out. That's what's going to tell us if Aquaman helped getting people back on board or not. If Aquaman's terrible, and we have no reason to believe it will be. Sorry guys, forgot to double check my camera here. If Aquaman is terrible, and again, we have no real reason here to believe that it will be. But if it's terrible, then we're going to see the audience once again pass judgment when Shazam comes out, and the numbers will probably be even smaller. If Aquaman's great and they love it, it could help. It could help. And that's where we're going to start to see things. So again, I think the one nice thing about Aquaman's position, and Aquaman has a ton of things working against it, but I think the one nice thing about Aquaman's position right now is that it shouldn't have to worry about its overall responsibility to the DCEU as a whole and all that kind of stuff, because it's gonna make what it's gonna make opening weekend. The real importance of the film is how good does the film turn out to be. You got a good director. You got Jason Momoa in the lead role. I think he's great as Aquaman. I really do. Let's see if that turns things around or not. Let's see. Jason Laricella writes, I'm watching Infinity War at the El Capitan on opening night. Good for you, man. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a fan of the El Capitan Theater. It's historic. It's amazing, especially when you go in there. The El Capitan is owned by Disney. It's this theater on Hollywood Boulevard, right in Hollywood. And it's got like this huge, massive pipe organ with this world champion organist comes in and plays during the opening. Not during the opening, but while people are coming and getting seated, this organist playing all these classic Disney music and everything. And it's awesome. It's rich and regal as you look around. It feels like you're in Hollywood history in this theater. There's something very cool about watching a film in the El Capitan. Disney does a lot of their premieres there and a lot of their press screenings there as well. The problem with the El Capitan is it's difficult to get in and out of the place. Also, you got about this much legroom. I mean, I swear, their seating is like... The seating is very uncomfortable. You got no legroom. Every time, don't get me wrong, I love going to all the premieres. I mean, a lot of the other places do their premieres around the town. Disney likes doing some of them at their theater, the El Capitan, and there's something, regal about that. But I gotta admit, every time I see that one of the screenings there, I go a little, because I know I gotta cram myself into this seat and be a little bit uncomfortable for a couple hours. But to some people, the rest of it, like the opulence of the rest of it just kind of makes up for it. So it's an interesting place to see it, but I'm really happy you got tickets for opening night. And I bet, being Disney's theater, they'll probably do something pretty special there for opening night. So you have to jump online and let us know if they do something special at it. Let's see. Conor Diaz writes, you're the best, John. So inspirational. Oh, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. Rec Cruz writes, do you think Marvel will ever make a Moon Knight movie, or is it too close to Batman that they might forever avoid it? I don't know. I've got several friends that really would love to see a Moon Knight movie, that talk about it like all the time. I don't know that I see it happening, to be honest with you. I just don't know that it fits in there. But here's the thing. If Marvel goes on another 20 years, there's going to be lots of openings for new characters and new stories to tell. It's whenever you use the word ever, that makes it difficult to ask, because anything can happen, right? When you're talking about ever. Now, if you ask me, do I think they'll make a Moon Knight movie in the next 5 years? I'd say absolutely not. I just do not see that happening in the next 5 years. If you ask 10 years, well, 10 years becomes a question. Once you use the word ever, it's really hard to shoot down any idea. It's hard to shoot down the idea of Mickey Mouse joining the MCU. If you're going to use the phrase ever, right? At some point, some 90-year-old Bob Iger, who's still the chairman and everything at Disney, will go, you know what? Put Mickey in there with Captain America. And they put in Mickey Mouse. I mean, it could if you use the word ever. So I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but it's difficult to shoot it down entirely when you use the phrase ever. Darth Impact writes, hey, John, how's it going? It's going great, man. Thanks for asking. Two-part question. So what you think of the Owls of Gaul? I love that movie. So beautiful. And why hasn't there been a sequel? Well, there wasn't a sequel because it didn't do all that well. I believe it's called The Guardians, the Owls. How do you spell it? I don't even think we're spelling it right. No, we're not spelling it right. Let me see if I can find it. Legend of the Guardians, the Owls of Ga'Hoole, is how it's spelled. Domestically, it made like 55 million. Worldwide total was 140 million, so it lost a little bit of money. That's why you didn't see a sequel. Not a lot of people remember this little animated film. It was directed by Zack Snyder, and I really enjoyed it. I liked Owls of Ga'Hoole. I really did. And this sounds weird to say. It's always weird using the term cinematography when you're talking about an animated film, but the cinematography of Legend of the Guardians, the Owls of Ga'Hoole, was so beautiful. Like, the soaring shots with the owls and everything was so great. It was like a beautiful thing to watch, which is quite often something you say a lot about a Zack Snyder movie, but I actually quite enjoyed that one. But the reason it never got a sequel, it didn't do any business. So no one's going to invest and put money up for a sequel when nobody wanted to go see the first one. It's just that simple. But I love the movie. I really do. I liked it quite a bit. All right. John G. Gonclaves writes, John G. Goncalves, I'm sorry, watched Rogers' trailer. Oh, I'm assuming you mean the Mr. Rogers trailer. Oh my God, wow. Yeah, guys, if you haven't seen, I think it's called Won't You Be My Neighbor or Be My Neighbor, something like that. There's a documentary about Mr. Rogers coming out. And it came out, people said, John, have you seen this trailer yet? And I hadn't seen it yet. And then I went to go see Isle of Dogs, and they played the Mr. Rogers trailer in front of it, and I was just shook. I'm like, I have to see this movie now. And I wanted to weep that Mr. Rogers isn't with us now, because I've been saying on my show for about a week now, our world needs Mr. Rogers. Watch this trailer and tell me you wouldn't give your left arm to have Mr. Rogers back in the world today. Like, our world doesn't need Mr. Rogers right now. It's amazing. And you're right, that trailer, I can't remember the last time I was this excited about a documentary. I cannot remember. I could not tell you the last time I was this damn excited about a documentary. I cannot wait to see this thing. I'm just shaking. I'm so excited about it. Okay. Next one. John De Silva writes, 2 more recommendations. Bestseller with James Woods. Untouchables. Costner, Connery. Thoughts. Just like a wop to bring a knife to a gunfight. Yeah, I love Untouchables. Costner was great in it. Did Sean Connery win an Academy Award for that? Hold on a second. Let me look this up here quick. Sean Connery, IMDb. Part of me wants to say he won an Academy Award for that. I could be way off on that, but let me just look this up here. Academy Awards. Yeah, he won Best Supporting Actor for The Untouchables. It is, oddly enough, the only Academy Award Sean Connery was ever even nominated for. Sean Connery was only ever nominated in 1988 as Best Supporting Actor in The Untouchables, and he won. And it is well deserved. It is one of the great Sean Connery performances. And Robert De Niro as, why am I forgetting the name of the biggest mobster of all time? For whatever, I don't care. Robert De Niro is amazing in it. Kevin Costner is fantastic in it. Costner played Elliot Ness. And Robert De Niro, why is the name of the mobster Al Capone? Of course. Why did I freeze on Al Capone? Plays Al Capone. Absolutely fantastic. And I cannot remember bestseller. I don't remember that one. Let me look this up for a second. Bestseller. The one with Brian Dennehy. Yeah. Yes. I didn't love that movie. I didn't love that one. Brian Dennehy is one of the great character actors of all time, by the way. Lately, he's popped up now and again in Blacklist. James Woods is just amazing. But I didn't like that one as much. But Untouchables, damn right. Untouchables, damn right. And again, one of the greatest lines in any movie, just like a wop, bringing a knife to a gunfight. Sean Connery's not very good at sounding Irish. Okay, let's see here. Hector Jeter writes, one of the problems with Spider-Man 3 was, quote-unquote, too many characters. That's not a valid criticism anymore, right? After how many are in comic book movies now? And you know what's the funny thing is, I've always said, I've never felt that was a valid criticism. Because the difference between Spider-Man 3 and every other movie you see is there's just as many characters in every other movie. You just recognize the name of the characters in the Spider-Man 3 movie. You know the name Sandman. You know the name Venom. So it feels like there's more characters, when in reality, 40-year-old version has just as many, if not more, characters in the movie. It's just that you don't recognize those characters' names. Now, you get into some movies like X-Men Days of Future Past, Captain America Civil War, and oh my God, now Infinity War. Now you're talking about being a little bit worried that maybe there's too many characters, perhaps. But you're right. That I always thought that criticism of Spider-Man 3 was nonsense. That doesn't mean they should have had multiple villains. There's a difference. It's a different debate to debate whether a movie should have multiple villains or a single villain, but that's a different discussion than are there too many characters in the film. I never felt there were too many characters in that film. I may have questioned before whether or not, this movie would have benefited from having one villain as opposed to multiple villains, but that's a different discussion altogether. So I'm completely with you on that, Hector. I totally agree with you on that. Rose Ryan just sends in a super chat. Thank you so much, Rose. I appreciate that. Thank you. Darth Impact writes, the elitist snobs at cons said that Netflix movies will not qualify for any awards. Man, I hope Sundance, Tribeca, and Toronto don't follow suit. What do you think? Look, I don't think that makes them snobs. I don't. Seriously, CBS, NBC, ABC, Fox, forever have made for television movies. They always have. And they've been considered for Emmys because they're made for television. And television has its own set of awards. This was the point Steven Spielberg was making the other day. And look, I disagree with Steven on this, but I can totally see where people are coming from who believe this because, look, Steven says, if a movie was made and intended for television, it gets qualified for an Emmy. There's nothing wrong with being qualified. He wasn't putting Emmys down. He just says they're different. Television and theatrical are two different things. And whatever's made for television is for Emmys. Whatever's made for theatrical is Oscars. They're two different things. They're both equally valued, and one's not better than the other. They're just different things. So I could understand. Again, I don't know that I agree with it, but I can understand where they're coming from. I don't think they're being snobs for it. They only want to highlight, they celebrate the theatrical experience, and therefore they want to recognize and honor movies that are being made with the intention of being a theatrical release film. That's what they are. They are a film festival. So I get it. And therefore I have no problem. Look, if I was in charge of the Academy, here's what I would do. I would say, if a movie is produced by a small production house that traditionally does theatrical films, but, it gets picked up by Netflix, I say then it still qualifies for the Oscars. It may not be good enough, but it qualifies, right? That's what I would say. But at the same time, I don't feel like I can argue against anybody who would say otherwise. Because there is a difference between making something for a theatrical experience and making something for television. And we have a different awards body for honoring things that are made for television. The Emmys. So why do we devalue the Emmys by saying, oh, it's not good enough to qualify them for the Emmys? Why would we say that? It's just as esteemed as the Oscars. It's just for a different medium, television versus movies. And so if Cons is saying, I'm not saying this is what they're saying, but if they're saying, well, we in this festival, we are here to celebrate the theatrical experience. Therefore, our stuff is for theatrical and movies made for theatrical release. That's what our thing is for. That's not putting down anybody that does it for television. It's just not what we are. We're something different. Then I have no problem with it. I really don't. I know people want me to have a problem with it, but if you just think rationally, which I don't always do, but if I try to think rationally, then rationally thinking, there's a solid argument to be made for what Steven Spielberg was saying, for what Cons is saying, that maybe the Oscars should look at it differently. Again, it's not necessarily what I think, but I can totally see where they're coming from. I really do. All right, just got a few minutes left here. Next one comes to us from Stark Syndrome, who writes, thoughts on Reign of Fire. Love how they keep Star Wars alive in a dystopian future. Also, thoughts on Moon with Rockwell. In my opinion, definitely a great movie. Well, I only answer one question per thing, so I'll take your first one there on Reign of Fire. Reign of Fire is a movie. You got Christian Bale in there. You got Matthew McConaughey in there. I'll remember this, though. The dragon effects for Reign of Fire today they'll look a little bit dated. But at the time, they were ahead of their time. That was some world-class VFX at the time that came out. And actually, what year did that movie come out? Reign of Fire. Came out in 2002. We're talking, that movie's nearly 16 years old. 16 years old. And oh my gosh, I forgot Gerard Butler is in that movie too, for heaven's sakes. That movie is nearly 16 years old. Anyway, at the time, the VFX in those dragons were like world class, completely world class. And I was amazed at it. It was also the first movie that everybody went, holy crap, Matthew McConaughey is buff. When did this Matthew McConaughey kid get buff? And then he went on a big streak for about 10 years where his body was his main calling card of things. But yeah, I dig the movie. I do. I don't love it. I don't. It's pretty bad in many ways, but As a spectacle, it was pretty cool. Let's see. Next one. Hector Jeter writes, so happy for the League of Their Own show. That's still one of my favorite movies. It'll work since it's exploring other characters and the story behind it. Well, we don't know if it'll work. I mean, you can do all the right things and still have it fail miserably. And don't forget, in 1993, they tried doing a League of Their Own TV show that was meant to be a sequel to the movie. It was supposed to be all the same characters. They just had different actors playing some of the roles and some of the same actors as well. But it was supposed to be just season 2. Like, League of Their Own was the first season that they played together. And then the League of Their Own TV series was the second season of baseball that they were all playing together. And Dottie comes back, played by a different actress other than Gina Davis. But, yeah, whether it'll work or not, I'm not sure. For those of you who didn't hear the story earlier, the basic news is that Amazon is developing a half-hour comedy series based on a League of Their Own. And it's clearly not going to have the same actors. And it's not even going to have the Dottie character or her sister or anything like that. But it's going to be based on the same premise of the All-Girls Baseball League that was formed in 1943, I want to say. Maybe it's 49. Anyway, it's going to be based on that. It's going to be a half-hour comedy. Could work. Amazon's been making a lot of splash lately with their with the announcement of their TV stuff, especially with their Lord of the Rings stuff. $500 million to do a Lord of the Rings series. We're going to see how that turns out. All right. Almost done here. Next one, Matt Thornton writes, talking of Spielberg, I feel bad that he's not too fond of his own movie, Hook. I think it's an amazing 90s classic. I love Hook. Bangarang, man. Bangarang. Every once in a while I'll say that instead of saying cool, I'll go bangarang. And some people look at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I'm like, you don't know what bangarang means? I can't be friends with you. Yeah, I adore that film. Dustin Hoffman was great, and Robin Williams, obviously. Even Julia Roberts' Tank was great. I love the movie. I really do. And I know that Spielberg, it's not like one of his favorite films he's done, but I love it. I totally love Hook. Rufio. Anyway, okay. Let's see. We had a bunch more come in. Okay. Where do we go? I feel bad. There he goes. Okay, so the next one comes to us from Arthur Costa, who writes, I don't know what the first two words mean. Warner Brother released Justice League Snyder's Cut in November. Any update? No, that there was some fake April Fool's news going around about that, but no, that's not going to happen. At least I don't think it is. Nothing that I've heard about it at any rate. Jack Tatum writes, hey, John, love the show so much. Ready Player 2, Spielberg back to direct. Well, not unless it picks up business at the box office. Not unless it picks up serious steam at the box office. It needs to make more money. This movie needs to make in the $420 million range to break even. So let's have that conversation when it hits 500 million, if it hits 500 million. If it hits 500 million worldwide, I think there's a conversation there to be had. I just don't know that it's going to hit 500 million, which sucks because it totally deserves it. This movie's great. One of my favorite movies of the year so far. And it's a young year, granted, but so far. Let's see. The number Thor writes, I know we will never see Zack Snyder's direct another DCU movie, but could we see him direct an MCU movie or an independent superhero movie like a Hancock or something independent? Maybe. I don't care if we do or not. Zack Snyder's going to make some pretty cool films, whether they're comic book movies or not. He's going to make some visionary, cool films. They don't have to be part of the MCU, the DCEU. I really doubt the MCU would want to bring him on, considering his connection and all the baggage that comes along with his connection to the DCU and how that unceremoniously all fell apart and everything. So I really don't see why the MCU would do it. Plus, if you're Zack Snyder, why would you want to do another comic book movie? And just to drag up all the baggage and everything. Nah, look, Zack Snyder's a visionary guy. He's one of the best visual storytellers in the business. He's got an incredible imagination. He doesn't need to do comic book films. He can do any kind of film he wants and tell some really imaginative, creative stories. Maybe something like an independent thing like Hancock. But again, if I'm him, why would I want to go back to that genre and just open up the discussion for all the baggage again? I just don't see what the upside would be. So I'm just looking forward to seeing whatever he decides to do next. Whatever he does next, I'm game for. It doesn't need to be a comic book movie to me. Alan Gonzalez writes, I don't like spoilers in toys, like the Infinity War toys. Well, tough. I mean, I know it seems weird to say, but I have to tell people, look, this is the way the toy business is. The toy business, it's just the way, there's nothing they can do about it. Look, for them to have a toy ready for when a movie comes out, they have to be in full-fledged motion of getting everything together at least 1 full year before that movie opens. Like, being married to Anne, and Anne being one of the people at Hasbro that she is, I've gained a whole new appreciation for that huge process and how time-consuming that process is. And if they want to have these toys ready for around the time a movie comes out, you got to start moving out a year in advance. And then you got to, if you want the retailers to pick up your toys, like if you want Walmart and Target and Best Buy in some cases, and the online things, you want these retailers to pick up your toys? Well, guess what? You got to take those toys to the big toy markets, showcase the toys, put them in catalogs, blah, blah, blah. And that all has to happen long before the movie comes out if you're going to have these toys on shelves ready to go when the movie comes out. There is nothing the toy industry can do about it. It's just the way it is. It is just the way it's always been, and there's no way around it. The only way around it is to go, well, then don't put out any toys until 3 months after the movie comes out. Well, that would just be ridiculous, because then you're not going to sell 1/10 the amount of toys. You want the toys to be on the shelves when the movie's hot. And in order to do that, that means you got to start the ball rolling a certain distance in advance. And part of that process is showcasing these toys at toy fairs and toy markets to the retailers, so the retailers can put in orders to get those toys enough time in advance that the manufacturers can make enough toys to meet those orders to make sure all those toys are on the shelves within a week or two when the movie opens. Like, I've had a bunch of people saying, why are these things leaking out? Well, blame the people leaking it. Don't blame the toy industry. The toy industry is doing what they have no other choice but to do. They are doing their business the way they have to do it. If you want to get mad at these leaks because of toys, blame the assholes who are taking pictures of these leaks and leaking them out. Blame them. Don't blame the toy industry, because it's not the toy industry's fault. They have no choice but to do it this way. Just a couple more here. Hey, been a Ghostface fan since Movie Vlog. You are one of my biggest inspirations to me. I started a nerd news channel because of you. Thank you for being you. That's awesome, man. Like, one of the things I hope to do, and that's why I put out some content like my getting started video. I've got this 2-hour-long video online that I made. It's totally free. It's just on YouTube. It's a 2-hour video of how you can get started in doing a blog, in doing a podcast, in doing a YouTube channel, whatever. I go into some technical aspects, some equipment suggestions, like process, things like that. And I do that because I think the film fan community becomes more vibrant and active when more people participate. Not that every channel is going to get 10,000 subscribers or anything like that, but that's not what's important. The important thing is not that you get 1,000 viewers on your video. The important thing is that you're online doing what you love, discussing movies, and hopefully a few film fans can come along and share in your discussion too. I think that's healthy for the film fan community. That's why I encourage people to start their own stuff, not to become full-time YouTubers, because that will happen to less than 0.01% of people who do it. But if you just do it because you love movies and you want to be a part of that community, you want to contribute to that community, it's a great reason to do it. And I encourage people to do it. I try to help people do it. And I think that's awesome, Suburban Nerd, that you're doing that. So congrats on that. That's great. Let's see. Brian Rogers writes, wasn't a fan for recasting Leia before The Last Jedi was released. Now I've seen the movie and I want nothing more than to see the character arc to be complete. Absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody tried to get into a Twitter discussion with me the other day, saying to me, John, no, you can't recast Leia. And look, I totally respect, I'm using that voice, but I do totally respect anybody who doesn't want Leia recast. Because I know your motivation comes from a place in your heart that you want to respect Carrie Fisher and honor Carrie Fisher. I think you're thinking ass backwards about how to honor her and what is disrespecting her, but I know that's your motivation, so we're on the same page. That's great. So I got all the respect in the world for people who don't want to see them recast Leia. My point of view is simply this. It is not respecting Carrie Fisher. As a matter of fact, it is the exact opposite. The term disrespect doesn't even begin to cover it. It is a spit in the face of the legacy of Carrie Fisher to take this character that she has spent decades giving us and to sabotage that character and discard that character before that character is able to be brought to the character's conclusion. It's just that simple. Carrie Fisher spent decades giving us Princess Leia. Now we go, oh, well, Carrie Fisher's not here. Well, fuck that character then. Throw her away. She's garbage. Not worth it. Not worth it. The Princess Leia character, who cares? Throw it away. Throw it away. BS. Total BS. Carrie Fisher should be able to rely, now that she's passed on, she should be able to rely on her colleagues and her fans to make sure that that character she's worked on for decades gets brought to that character's conclusion. Anything else, in my opinion, is a spit in the face of Carrie Fisher's thing. So that's my belief on it. Especially, and I agree with you on that, especially after seeing The Last Jedi, we really need to see this character brought to her conclusion. We've spent decades with it. Anyway, Kenny Keems writes, why was Maul beaten so quickly by Kenobi, Seven Samurai, in Rebels, but had beaten Kenobi multiple times in Clone Wars? I don't know. Ask the writers. Kenobi is just trained a lot harder, maybe, in those years. So I honestly, I don't know. Yeah, I'm the wrong guy to ask. All I can think about is that while, look, Maul had been through a lot of trials and tribulations and maybe wasn't the same guy anymore. And was just so consumed with rage, he's not focusing on training. Maybe Obi-Wan, that's all he's been doing. The entire time he's been in exile is just going deeper and deeper into the Force and training more and more and more. And now he's 5 times the fighter that he was than the first time Maul and him faced each other. That's really the only thing I can think of. But that makes sense to me. Okay, I'm going to take that question from Ranger 8, and then that's the last question of the day, guys. Suburban Nerd writes, I watched that vid to buy my equipment, just newer. Oh, you're talking about my how-to video. Good, that's great. Yeah, and it would be newer now because the video is now like 4 or 5 years old, and I need to do a new version of it, whether I'm going to write a book about it or whether I'm going to do another 2-hour video, I'm not sure. But I'm glad you were able to, that was helpful to you. Okay, and the final question today. This comes to us from Ranger 8, who writes, this will be the last time I will be able to listen to one of your shows for 12 weeks. I'm going to the police academy for 12 weeks, and it is no phone for 12 weeks. Makes me sad, but I'm also following my dream. That's awesome, man. Good on you. You know, it's funny, Ranger, because somebody else wrote in a few weeks ago saying this will be the last time for a few months because they're going off to boot camp for one of the branches of the military. I can't remember which one. I think that's awesome, man, that you're going in to serve your community by being a police officer, training to be a police officer. That is awesome. And you know what? God willing, the John Campea Show, Open Mic, we'll all still be here. The film fan community will all still be here when you get back. Best of luck in those 12 weeks, man. Go do yourself, your family, and all of us film fans proud. And thank you again for being willing to use your life to be of service to your community. That's awesome. And I respect the hell out of you for doing that. So thanks for sharing that with us. All right, guys, that will do it for this installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much for being here. Listen, guys, don't forget, we do the John Campea Show every morning. Make sure you come back again this morning. If you haven't watched the John Campea Show from earlier today, go on back and watch us. Give this video a thumbs up. Share it around if you like. And make sure, guys, you're following me on Twitter, simply at John Campea. All right, guys. Thanks so much for being here. Again, this is the best part of the day, doing these shows with you guys. Thanks so much for being here. My name's John Campea. And until my next video, bye-bye.